speakers for coming. First time I heard about CBD oil was probably 15, 20 years ago. And Willie Harrelson was on one of the Tonight shows talking all about it, raving about it. I thought another one of these crazy Hollywood guys trying to do something, you know, weird and different. And now every night before I go to bed, I take my CBD oil and it helps my knees and my sleep. So there's something to it, and Marty's going to share that with us soon. Marty Ford is our speaker today. He's got degrees in engineering and business administration, and during his 25-year career as an operations leader, has been spent turning underperforming companies into peak performers. His experience has been focused on medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and dietary supplement manufacturing industries, and added stint as VP of operations for the largest manufacturer and wholesaler of pipe and kayaks in the world. After he evaluated the benefits of hemp byproducts, he and Sharon decided to start Ascent Naturals. Marty's belief in the benefits of hemp and its byproducts is so strong that he and Sharon also launched Upstate Alchemy, a brand to bring the highest quality hemp products to market at more affordable prices. And he is the current CEO of Ascent Naturals, located right here in Travelers Rest, not downtown Travelers Rest, but Travelers Rest. And as I can say, I'm a happy user of his product, and I'll let him tell us all about it. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? So, no? Hello, hello? Okay. I just had to move that over a little bit. So if I seem a little bit wanting to move around up here, I normally move around when I talk. I can't because of Zoom, so forgive me for that. I'll appear a little bit jumpy. So I want to go in and there we go. Give a little bit of background on myself, maybe expand a little bit. I do have over 25 years experience in medical device manufacturing and dietary supplement manufacturing. And 15 of those years were running the GNC manufacturing facility that's on Woodruff Road in Greenville. Ran first the solid dosage and then the soft gel operations there. When I left there and after my little stint as kayak manufacturer, was really trying to figure out what to do next. And I was doing consulting work for a pharmaceutical company in New York that wanted to start their own extraction. They were using hemp extracts in some of the products that they were making, and they wanted to be able to make those extracts because at the time, the extracts were very, very expensive, $3,000 a kilo expensive. So I went out and I did the work to try to figure out what would be the best options for a hemp extractor. And when I brought that back to them, they had just made a huge investment in another part of the business. And they couldn't do the extraction facility, but they said, hey, if you would like to start this business, we'll buy from you. So built-in first customer, and that's what really got us down starting Ascent Naturals. And that was in 2019. And we started out just to be a hemp extractor. We really didn't have any plans to go beyond that, but we weren't the only people to jump into the space at the time. A lot of people jumped into the space, and it really depressed pricing. It made it hard to sell biomass from a farmer's perspective and extracts from a processor's perspective. So we decided to become a contract manufacturer. And part of that was starting our own brand, Upstate Alchemy, which we do sell locally. And that was started in 2020. And what better time to start a business than at the beginning of COVID? Now, I just got to say, this doesn't get any better than that. Right now, Ascent Naturals is one of only 5 processors, hemp processors, left in the state. In 2019, there were over 40. So that kind of shows you that people had to get out of the business. You had to decide whether either to become a huge hemp extractor so you could take advantage of economies of scale or do something else. We chose to do something else with contract manufacturing. With Upstate Alchemy, we noticed that there's not a lot of education out there. We really started Upstate Alchemy as a platform to educate people on all about hemp extracts. And we also wanted to be able to, since we're the manufacturer, offer more affordable pricing. So that's what got Upstate Alchemy going. I use the products every day. I use them for my back. I use them when I have trouble sleeping. But we've seen not only firsthand on our own use, but friends, family, and other people that have used the product, how well it's worked for them. All right, so there's a lot of confusion over what is cannabis, what is marijuana, what is hemp. All marijuana and all hemp are cannabis. Right? They're just different strains of the cannabis plant. And if you look at any cannabis plant, they have over 70 cannabinoids. Some people say over 100 cannabinoids that are there. They're discovering more minor cannabinoids all the time. So what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? It's a federal definition created when they passed Farm Bill in December of 2018. The only defining difference between hemp and marijuana is hemp has to have less than 0.3% THC, delta-9 THC, specifically. That is the difference between hemp and marijuana. Right? Everything else is the same. If you had two plants side by side, if they were of similar strains, you would not be able to tell the two apart. You wouldn't be able to smell them or taste them or anything to be able to say one was different than the other. You would have a different feeling if you smoked it, yes. Typically, marijuana strains of cannabis range anywhere from 14 to 30% delta-9 THC. And delta-9 THC is the psychoactive. It's the major psychoactive. If you look at typical hemp strains, then they range from 7 to 20% CBD. CBD is the predominant cannabinoid in most hemp strains. Although there are a few now that have been crossbred to be able to be more dominant in CBG. This is a typical test result, potency result of testing hemp. So on here, what you'll see is the total amount of delta-9 THC. And remember, that has to be below 0.3%. It has your total CBD. And from a processor perspective, I want that number to be as high as possible because it means I have to process less to get the same amount of product. But one of the things to note here, there's a list of cannabinoids that are on there. Those are what are considered the major cannabinoids. So the hemp plant has all those other cannabinoids, and this is testing just those majors. But if you look at a typical hemp extract, your distillates can be 85% CBD, 15% is everything else. Right, so that's something to keep in mind with a full spectrum extract. I will say this test result was actually done on 2019 biomass. And that's important to note because if you look at the total THC amount, it says 0.52. So total THC is taken by adding total delta-9 THC from the test report, and then taking 0.877 of the THCA. And in the plant form, most of the cannabinoids are in their acidic form, not the form that the body uses more readily. So the conversion factor, this actually would have failed testing in 2020. And we'll talk about some of those rules in a bit, but it's just an interesting note. In addition to potency, the other things that we test for are pesticides, heavy metals, mycotoxins, microbials, and then some people will test for terpenes. One of the important things to note about the hemp plant is it's a soil scrubber. It will absorb contaminants out of the soil and go into the plant. So it's really, really important from a farming perspective that soil's tested before you ever plant. Because if it's in there, it'll get into the hemp plant. Then you don't want those things getting into the body. All right, so let's talk about some uses of hemp. First, you've got, which is more traditional, First, you got flower and leaves. So that's where all your cannabinoids. And all kind of different consumer products are made from there, from tinctures, topicals, gummies are really big right now. And we actually have some samples of stuff on the table over here for Upstate Alchemy. If you just want to see what they are, what they look like, you can go over and take a look at those. Then you have the stalk. And there's a huge difference in the way hemp is grown, whether you want it to be for the biomass, where you get the cannabinoids, or whether you want it to be for fiber. If you're growing for fiber, the plants are planted very closely together. They grow very tall, and there's not a lot of flower in them. That way, there's a lot of fiber to be able to harvest from that plant material. If, on the other hand, you're going to plant so that you can grow for the cannabinoids, then you want them further apart, and they grow bushy, and they grow maybe about 8 feet tall, and that's actually me there. That's on the next picture. Sorry, but they grow about 8 feet tall, and they're nice, big, and wide. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong picture while I'm talking about some of this, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'm going to come back to the uses for a minute. So from the stalk, you can see, I mean, fiber has always been used for cordage, especially marine cordage. It's very strong. It's used for clothing. There's actually, it's used in car panels, interior car panels. And if you were to open up like the door on a BMW or a Mercedes or just about any brand, those interior panels are made of hemp fiber because it's very, very strong and it's very light. They've even made demonstration cars that the entire outside, every exterior panel of the vehicle is hemp, just to show how strong it can be. Then you also have from the herd or the center of that stalk, it can be used to create what's called hempcrete, which is a substitute for concrete. Insulation, livestock feed and bedding, the seeds can be used to create oil for cooking or can be used as food. They're a great source of protein. And because of that, manufacturers will make protein powder for hemp seeds. And then last, the roots. And we talk about the fact that they're a soil scrubber. Hyperaccumulator is the official term. But they are, it will absorb anything that's in the soil. Now jumping it back, I guess, forward again here. You can see the differences in the way hemp plants are grown. All right, so that one on the left is being grown for fiber, and the stuff on the right here is being grown for biomass. And it's just the difference in the way the farmer has to plant to be able to maximize the part of the plant that they are trying to grow. I'm not sure what that was, but oops, I lost the mouse for some reason. All right, so now that we've grown for biomass, the biomass is taken off of the stalks, so the flowers, the buds, and the leaves are removed. After the plant's been dried, they're put into large super sacks and they're sent to us for processing. So what we're doing is we're taking that biomass and we're going from plant material. We use an ethanol extraction method, and we are actually washing the cannabinoids and the terpenes off of that plant material, and we are creating crude, which in the picture on the right are the bottles that are on the right. It's very dark, it's very thick, it's very viscous. It's if you can think of molasses, it's about 10 times thicker than it. You can turn it up on its side and just hold it there. And you might see a little bulge after a minute or two, but it's not bad. Then you can process that crude even further into distillate. So that's kind of the honey-colored oils that are there, and it's just as thick as the crude is. But what you do when you're doing that processing is you're removing all of the terpenes. So you have the full material that you've taken off the plant, which is the crude. Then you're taking that, you're processing it through a distillation process where you're removing the terpenes, and now you're left just with the cannabinoids. These are the two forms that are. Okay. Terpenes are compounds that are found in all plant material, and they provide fragrance and taste. Not 100%, but they provide fragrance and taste for that plant. And the different combinations of terpenes, and I want to say there's about 50-ish terpenes, but the different combinations is what gives each plant or each strain of a plant this distinctive smell and taste. Some of them do have medicinal properties, yes, and they're prized for that. So the terpenes that we remove from the crude, we can sell those to someone who actually processes terpenes and separates those out into the individual components to be able to sell. No. No.
What are some examples of those terpenes that can be sold and used?
Yeah. Beta carotene.
People on Zoom know what I said.
Yeah, so the question was, what are some of the names of some of the terpenes? And I actually had a slide in here about that, had them listed, and I took it out because I thought I was getting too detailed. So from memory, it's limonene, beta carotene. I'm not pronouncing these. I'm butchering these names, by the way, so I apologize. But those are actually two of the most predominant ones, especially in hemp, that companies will want. So if you have, if you do the, I talked about the terpene testing earlier. If you do the terpene testing and you show your terpene profile, depending on which terpenes that particular strain is rich in, will determine the demand for it. Because some of the terpenes have a greater demand than others. And so in a full spectrum crude product, they stay. So some products, we want them there, but other products we don't. And the reason for that is I wouldn't put crude into a gummy because it has a very, very strong hemp taste. I want to use a distillate for that manufacture because it smooths out the taste. If you were, I guess what you would call maybe a traditionalist, there are people that will say it's no good unless you use full spectrum crude because they want that strong taste and they want that experience. But most of the population who aren't purists, they want to be able to enjoy what they're eating and not have a bad aftertaste. So that would give you another whole experience. It is not, at least not for the ones that are here. Yeah. The other thing that I don't have a picture here of, but you can actually go beyond distillate and you can get into isolates. So you can get into isolates. So if you wanted to actually just have CBD and nothing else, you can process the distillate further. You can crystallize the CBD out of it, and then you have just powdered CBD left. Okay. All right. Most cannabinoids, and I stated this earlier, exist in their acidic form in the plant. And you have to apply heat to be able to get them to convert to their non-acidic. So if you consider a traditional case of smoking marijuana, the flame from smoking, the burning, is actually what makes THCA, which is non-psychoactive. It turns it into THC, which is psychoactive. Right, so without that heat, someone that smoked it, or inhaled it, they wouldn't get the psychoactive effect. So, but that's true for all the cannabinoids, not just THC. So we actually go through a process called decarboxylation, where we are heating the extracts that we're using to convert all of those acidic forms to their non-acidic forms. Let's see. The other thing, and the industry's gotten really bad about this, they call everything CBD. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be an isolate, it could be a distillate, it could be used from full spectrum. It could have almost no CBD, but be some other predominant cannabinoid. But everything gets called CBD, and it's really frustrating because it's hard to educate people on the products that they're going to be taking. Full spectrum means it has all of the cannabinoids. Broad spectrum means it has had the delta-9 THC removed. And there are a couple of different processes that you can do that. I've already talked about crude and distillate, and we talked about isolate. But without understanding what you're getting, you don't know if that's the right product. And unfortunately, the industry's put us in that position right now. The one thing I will say, talk about isolates. I talked about it's a pure form of a cannabinoid. Typically, it's CBD, which most people are using that isolate. But the one thing to remember there is even though it is considered pure CBD, there's always trace amounts of delta-9 THC. If you look at what manufacturers who create isolate or who create broad spectrum products, and again, broad spectrum, that delta-9 THC has been removed, their definition of having it removed is less than 0.1% delta-9 THC. In a consumer product where it's diluted down to a great effect, you'll never find it, but there's always trace amounts. So we talked about the major cannabinoids, and I have this chart here that kind of lists them and lists some of the benefits that you can get from the different cannabinoids. It also talks about, on here on the far right, it talks about psychoactivity. So delta-9 THC is very, very psychoactive. Delta-8, which you hear a lot about right now because, again, the federal government regulates hemp based on the amount of delta-9 THC. Not any other form of it, just delta-9. Delta-8 is mildly psychoactive. It's also great for pain control in small dosages. And then CBN, which is great for sleep, is very slightly psychoactive. You know, so those are some of the other major cannabinoids that have some level of psychoactivity. But if you look at this chart and you look through the whole thing, you see all these different benefits. There's many of the cannabinoids work for pain relief. But you have all of these other effects that you can gain from the cannabinoids, and it's what we call the entourage effect, where you get the synergies of all of those cannabinoids working together. That experience is better than if you just were to take a single cannabinoid, like a CBD isolate product, right? Because you have all those other cannabinoids working together. And there's a lot of interesting studies going on. If you were to go to PubMed and search for cannabinoids or CBD or hemp extracts, you'll see tons of studies that are in process right now. Some of the interesting ones, there's a study that was put out about CBDA and CBGA. Again, that's the acidic form, unconverted. But there's some potential for them to block COVID infection. And there was a lot of talk when COVID first came out about the fact that CBD could be effective in reducing inflammation in the lungs of candidates who had severe, or patients who had severe COVID infections. So it was being used to try to reduce some of that inflammation for severe cases. There's also several studies on cannabinoids' effect on cancer cells, and those focus mainly around CBG, delta-9 THCA, CBDA, and CBC. So there's a lot of stuff out there right now on what might be relevant and what effects they might have. But you know, until all those studies are done, we can't say definitively that the products can do those things. But I just want everybody to be aware of the studies that are going on.
Marty, I'm a little confused.
Sure.
Maybe you can clear this up. So I go to your location and I buy the CBD oil from you. Does it have all of these in the oils? Or do you have
it does. So Upstate Alchemy uses full spectrum distillates, and it has all of the cannabinoids, but we standardize to a specific amount of CBD. So you're always getting the same amount of CBD. The other cannabinoids float depending on the extra, what's in that extract, but you always have the same amount of CBD. So it is a full spectrum product. So let's talk about products, consumer products a little bit. The FDA has stated that cannabinoids cannot be in foods right now. They can go into dietary supplements as long as it is the natural extract that comes off the plant. And that extract cannot be spiked with the CBD isolate. And the reason behind that is the FDA recognizes CBD isolate as being a drug ingredient. There is a drug called Epidiolex that was developed just before the Farm Bill was passed. And it is used for treatment in seizures or for seizures for children, I think children and the elderly. So it's actually used to treat those seizures. It's very, very high dosages of CBD. And if you go back to that chart here, you'll actually see, eases or reduces seizures. There are several cannabinoids that work for it, CBD being one of those. Oh, wrong way. All cannabinoids are allowed in topical products. And if you go to any large mass retailer, you will find, well, most large, I won't say all, most will carry topical products. In fact, Ascent Naturals makes the CBD cream or topical line that Walgreens sells. So if you were to go in there and buy one of those, we actually make that here in Tropical Trust. But topical products are allowed, which you won't find in those large outlets, retail outlets, are edibles. Because the FDA hasn't been rock solid in its guidance, and they're waiting for the FDA to come out and say, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay. And until they do that, because hemp byproducts or hemp products are a small percentage of what a large retailer sells, they're just not going to take that risk and put that out there until they get that guidance from the FDA.
Didn't label anything, and I just didn't follow that through.
So, yeah, so the question is there a law that requires to not label? Right, so the label laws and guidance from the FDA are pretty specific. You cannot make a claim unless there is science to back it up. So now there's different ways to get that. There are, for over-the-counter products, there's a whole catalog of different ingredients and the claims that can be made using those ingredients. But if you're doing something new, you actually have to do that science before you can make a claim. So if you wanted to say, this product relieves pain, you have to go out, do the studies, come back, show the FDA the data, and then they have to approve it. The reaction that you described, I don't know that. Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like maybe the Delta 8 or even possibly the Delta 9 may have been a little bit high in the product you were taking. Milligrams. One of the things that we talk about a little bit later in here is the things that you really need to consider when buying consumer products. And it's, I'll save that to then, but it's important to make sure you're buying from someone you trust. Consumer products. So here are some examples of some of the things that we sell at Upstate Alchemy, and I also have a picture of smokables. We actually don't sell flowers or smokables, but we do tinctures, gummies, topicals, and pet products. And these products, the tinctures, the cannabinoids, they work the same for pets as they do for people. Ingestibles. So that's going to be your tinctures and your gummies. They work throughout the body. Any topical, unless it has something in it that makes it transdermal, is only going to work where you put it. So if you put something on your elbow, it's not. some interesting facts about the way these products work. Your body has an endocannabinoid system, and the cannabinoids from the hemp plant actually pair up with that system very well. Your body creates cannabinoids itself to be able to work with this endocannabinoid system. The hemp plant provides more. And there are two types of receptors, CB1 receptors, CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors are in the brain and central nervous system. CB2 receptors are in the immune response system. THC, delta-9 THC, interacts with the CB1 receptors, which is what causes that psychoactive effect. But it actually interacts the exact same way opioids do. So delta-9 THC actually has the potential, and it's used anywhere marijuana is legal. It's used for pain relief because it can get rid of opioids, the need for opioids. Solve a big problem that exists in the country today. CBD actually works a little bit differently. You will not have the same addiction from marijuana as you do from opioids. People can become dependent on it because they want that feeling.
It's a mental addiction, not a physical addiction.
That's correct.
Like food. You can be addicted by food.
Right. Yeah. That's one of my addictions. So, you know, I'm familiar with that. CBD actually works a little bit differently. It actually blocks the CB2 receptor. And again, those are the ones that are responsible for immune response throughout your body, which makes it a great anti-inflammatory because, and it's why it worked with some COVID patients early on that had severe inflammation infections in their lungs, because it stops that signal, your body creating the signal that causes inflammation. So it works differently. It's a blocker as opposed to matching up with a receptor, but that's one of the reasons it works. If you have pain related to inflammation, it's a great option. All right, talking about labels. This label here is actually from a cinnamon tincture that we did. And I wanted to point out some of the important things on the label. The first thing, most tinctures, the number on the front of the bottle is the total amount in the bottle, not the amount per dose. To get the amount per dose, you actually have to look at the supplement facts panel. And it'll actually tell you what the recommended dose is, and it will tell you how much CBD you're going to get if you take that amount. It also will tell you the source of the CBD. In this case, it's a full spectrum extract. The last thing is you should have a lot number and an expiration date. So if your labels don't have these characteristics or these items on them, I would suggest maybe look for something else. Right? This tells you everything you need to know about the product. And that's what a consumer needs to understand what they're getting.
So you add the flavor of cinnamon?
Yes. My favorite flavor.
It's
Right. It's a natural
so
cinnamon extract.
Strawberry or...
Yeah, the flavors we actually sell, we sell a natural, which is just the hemp paste. We do the cinnamon. Hey, excuse me. We do a citrus fresh, which is tangerine, orange, and lemon. And then we do a spearmint. So those are the flavors we sell the tinctures. Yeah, and the gummies, we actually do more. So the gummies, and forgive me, this is going to be from memory. So it's lemon, pineapple, strawberry, blue raspberry, what am I forgetting? Watermelon. There's one more. But right, they can be anything. Yeah, I was trying not to cheat. So. And on the screen, it's only like this big. So I really can't read it from here. Yes. It depends on the product. Most tinctures, because they're oil-based, are going to last at least 2 years. 2 years. Right. But it really depends on the product, and you actually have to do stability studies to show that your product lasts that long. Mm-hmm. Good question. So the question is, because of this particular product had a recommendation of 1 gummy as per serving, how many servings can you take per day? So we'll talk a little bit about the product and how it works with the body, and I'll try to answer that question because it's not the same for every person. I look at the full spectrum hemp product having 2 different dosage levels. The first one and the lower one, it gives you just full body relief, helps relieve anxiety. And we like to say, and Sharon coined this one, but it's not what you feel, it's what you don't feel. You're not going to get a high. It's not like you're drinking alcohol. But you get to the end of the day and you're like, I had a pretty good day. I didn't get upset over the little things. My knees don't hurt as bad. I had no trouble going up and down the stairs. It's what you don't feel at that first level. The second level, if you increase dosage, that will help you sleep. It doesn't put you to sleep, but it relaxes you to the point that it's very easy to fall asleep. So let me give you an example for me. If I take our 1,000 milligram tincture and I take half a milliliter in the morning and half a milliliter in the evening, that gives me just that kind of good feeling all day long. If I'm having trouble sleeping, and you only have to take it for sleep if you're having trouble. You don't have to take it on a consistent basis for sleep. It's only when you're having trouble. But for me, I'll take 2 droppers full at night before I want to go to bed, about 30 minutes. But I'm not average. I'm kind of big. So what we normally recommend for people to start is half a dropper in the morning, half a dropper in the evening. And then if you want it for sleep, full dropper for sleep. That works for most people. One or the other, yes, sorry. Not half plus a full. But that, take a full at night if you're trying to sleep. If you're just trying for relaxation, half in the morning, half in the evening. But it's different for different people. Even one of the farmers that we're good friends with, she may be 110 pounds. She's been a physical trainer her entire life. She's got super high metabolism. For it to help her sleep, she requires 3 full droppers of a 1,500 milligram tincture. And then it relaxes her to the point where she can sleep well. So it's a little bit of experimentation. You can't take too much. You will never get a psychoactive effect. You could drink the bottle of a tincture or eat all the gummies in it. You're not going to get a psychoactive effect from the product. If you take too much, you're going to want to go to sleep when you're not ready for sleep. So that's why you kind of have to dial in that low dose that works for you throughout the day, and then the higher dose that helps you relax to the point that it's easy to sleep.
So, the tincture was 1 milligram. This is 20 milligrams.
It's 1 milliliter per tincture, which in this case, I think this was a 1,500 milligram, is 50 milligrams per milliliter. So that would be a full dropper for this 1,500 milligram tincture. Sorry, I keep on moving out of the way of the computer.
So I'm still confused how that. So the gummy is higher in dose.
The gummies so you can find gummies at any dosage level out there up to 100 milligrams. We make 10 milligram and 20 milligram gummies. All right. If you look at the 1,000 milligram tincture that I talked about, half of a dose would be 17 milligrams, and a full dose is 33 milligrams. What I consider an advantage of a tincture over a gummy is you can dial in the dosage that works for you better. There's a graduated dropper. You can always fill it to the same amount. You can take it at the same time during the days, and you'll always get the same effect. The gummy, and Sharon corrects me on this all the time, I say nobody eats half of them. But the gummy, you're really getting 10 or 20 milligrams. So you can do increments of that. Yes, you can cut them and get smaller. The gummy is just really for someone who doesn't want to put a tincture in their mouth. It's an oil. You put it under your tongue, you hold it for a minute, you swallow it. If they don't like that feel, the gummy gives them an alternative to be able to take the product. All right, so challenges of selling hemp products. We already talked about the fact that you will not find ingestibles in any major outlet or retail outlet. And to make it even more difficult, the policies of the large online platforms make it impossible to advertise. You can't advertise anything that has cannabinoids on Google, on Amazon, on Facebook. You can't sell in any of those platforms. In fact, if you look at Amazon's statement about hemp products, because they have one, they say hemp products that have cannabinoids are illegal, which they are not. 2018 Farm Bill has stated that. But it makes it really hard to understand what's out there. And you can only sell product if it doesn't have, you can sell hemp products only if they do not have cannabinoids on those major platforms. So if you go to Amazon and you do some searching, and I'll show you some examples in a second, but you're not going to find CBD products. What you will find are things like this. So this is a hemp oil product on Amazon. I did the search yesterday. It says it has 28,000 milligrams, although it doesn't tell you 28,000 milligrams. So the one thing to remember here is 1 ounce equals 28,350 milligrams. So what they're basically just telling you is there's 2,800 milligrams of hemp seed oil in this bottle. But they don't actually tell you anywhere on this label that it's hemp seed oil. And unfortunately, in this country, people think more is better. If 1,000 worked, 1,500 is going to be better. 2,000 is going to be better. 5,000 is going to be better. So you see these numbers like this, and there's some that are even more outrageous. This one, at first glance, looks like this could be a hemp extract because 1,000 milligrams is a typical tincture made with cannabinoids. But if you look closely at that label, it doesn't say 1,000 milligrams. It just says 1,000. This is actually called Hemp Oil 1000. That's just the name of the product. Now, I will say, kudos for them. If you look at the ingredients list down here, they do tell you it's hemp seed oil. The other label did not. Here's one that's really outrageous. 500,000. But it's just part of the name. Hemp oil, 500,000. And I actually saw one that said 12 million milligrams. So if you think that means that little tiny bottle would weigh 12 kilos. All right, that's something there. So the point here is you just have to be careful with what you buy. You have to buy from a trusted source. You make sure you can get a certificate of analysis. Upstate Alchemy has all of their certificate analysis online. You buy a product from us and you go to our website, you can put the lot number in, it'll pull the certificate analysis up so you can see. And that certificate analysis tells you what's in the product. Oh, good point. Thank you. I'm trying to go faster because I'm running out of time here. Hemp seed oil has no cannabinoids. So if you spent $19.95 on what you thought was a great price for a tincture, you're taking hemp seed oil, which you can buy that same amount for about 9 cents in bulk per ounce. And you get some good omegas, 3s, and 6s, but you're not going to get any effects from cannabinoids because there are none. It's why hemp seed oil has always been legal. It's the one thing that's always been legal. We already talked about more isn't always better. So I did want to give everyone kind of a quick update also on the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act. That is the act that would have made medical marijuana legal in South Carolina. It did not get passed. It did not get passed on a technicality because an opponent of the act in the House found a clause that was passed in the act by the Senate that imposed a 6% sales tax on hemp products. And the Senate cannot impose taxes, only the House can. So it got thrown out as unconstitutional. They actually had the votes to get it to pass this year. So I know they're reworking that to try to get it to pass next year. So some highlights of the act. It would have made medical marijuana legal in the state, but only for very limited cases, which are up there. Although it did leave a stipulation for a medical marijuana board, an advisory board made up of doctors and pharmacists in the state to recommend additional conditions for which it would have been legal to use. It would have required an in-person doctor visit. So in many states, you can call up and say, hey, I want my medical marijuana card. And they say, okay, it'll be in the mail tomorrow. South Carolina took a very conservative approach. It was supposed to be medical marijuana. So they wanted to make sure it was used for conditions where it would help. Cards would renew annually. And the cards would specify how much a patient could use in a 14-day period. So it wasn't a free-for-all, buy as much as you want. Smoking marijuana would have remained illegal. So it would have been edibles and topicals only. Individuals would not be allowed to grow their own marijuana plants. Some states allow you to grow like up to 3 marijuana plants for your own personal use to make your own products at home. That would not be legal in South Carolina. And if you were in a job with public safety, commercial transportation, or operating commercial equipment, you would not be eligible to receive a ID card. Dispensary would have required to have a pharmacist in charge at the dispensary. So I just couldn't go out and start a dispensary myself. I'd have to partner with the pharmacist who then would be part of that business so that I could sell the products. Every step along the way, whether it's a farmer, processor, dispensary, every step would have been annually inspected by DHEC. They limited the number of each category that the state could have. And they also, this is actually a really good idea, they always required independent third-party testing to make sure that things like pesticides and heavy metals didn't make it into the product. And that whatever was on the product was really in it. The last stipulation, and these are the major points, there's some other minor stuff I'm not really going to get into, but the last major part was localities could regulate the sales in their jurisdiction. So if Greenville County came back and said, no, we're not going to do it here, it's illegal, then you couldn't have a dispensary or any other type of process in Greenville County. So that's, sorry, I apologize for speeding through those last slides, but I wanted to make sure I got everything.
There's a lot of information, and I'm sure we got a lot of questions, but we also had another class. So I'm going to ask everyone if they have questions for Marty. Go out by the fireplace, and if you got any questions, Marty will meet you out there, and we can have questions. And we go out this door, we can let the other class members come in. Thank you, Marty, for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
You realize my teacher class here always over prepared, got way too much information, but you don't want to get up here and say,
yeah, exactly.
That was perfect, and I'm sure we'll see if there's any questions. Fireplace is right over there.
Okay.